Hello, everyone. Welcome to IT Tech Talk. I'm your host, Joel Ward, and with me is Nick. Hey, Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. For those tuning in, today we are going to be discussing LinkedIn and Twitter and a little bit about Clubhouse. I still haven't gotten on Clubhouse yet. I'm waiting for the Android app to download and be available. So, Nick, I will say we just got off doing a podcast about podcasting for my 50th episode. So I will say one of the things that has been great, a great social media platform, and one of the platforms that we have connected on was Twitter. And Twitter has been a great platform for connecting with people who, you know, it may be a quick little conversation, but you can connect. I have used it in many ways to connect with you and with many different people, and I was able to get into the space of podcasting with it. I have reached out to a couple people through it and have gotten responses. So as far as a platform goes, it used to be I didn't like Twitter, and now I'm on Twitter all the time. Like, I am actually on Twitter like all day, every day, and tweeting and posting stuff. As far as that goes, Twitter, is it still, I mean, we are in 2021. Is Twitter still got some ground as far as a social media platform, or is it kind of like, do you see it dying off?
I think it definitely still has a lot of ground. They obviously have made a lot of people mad recently, especially in the U.S. with the election and politics and all that. And I think that's just I think it's just a sign of where we're at in the world right now as technology and social media. I mean, Facebook's under the same kind of scrutiny, and they've been around for the longest. They've collected the most data on people, and now people are upset, complaining about it, wanting a change to happen. And before, I mean, there was no other way to monitor or, I guess, govern the internet. And now people are trying to figure out ways to do that, and they're upset at these social media platforms for not doing more. But it's obviously a very interesting conversation. But I think Twitter's definitely going to be sticking around for a while.
Yeah, and actually, I don't remember if it was in the episode where we did social media before, but you discussed and said that Facebook and social media and the internet itself is a wild west, and it truly is. We are. I mean, it's kind of trying to still be a wild west, whereas there's others in it who are trying to be like, I'm the sheriff. This town needs to get behaving because I'm going to come, you know. And a lot of people don't understand is like back when the internet first started, because some of my users are not, you know, old enough to understand this, but back when the internet first started, everything was just everywhere. It wasn't just like controlled like it is now. Like everybody has a say of like, oh, Google owns this or Facebook owns that, and it was everybody, like it was everywhere. And Facebook didn't take off right away. Facebook was a company that started, I think, if I remember correctly, 2008, and Twitter and Instagram and WhatsApp and all that stuff was soon to follow. But you know, you had MySpace, and MySpace, even though it was a social platform, was not a platform that I was interested in. And when Facebook came out, I was like, oh my goodness, I can create a profile, like that's really cool, I can do this, I can do that, and I got into it, and I still use it. But the funny thing is like, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, what's Facebook? And they were younger than me, and I was like, oh, you know, I was like, they're like, oh, that's that thing that, you know, your generation uses. I'm like, my generation uses? Okay, so apparently Facebook is falling out of favor, but apps like Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter have been gaining momentum, in my opinion, because Twitter has been used a lot lately to vent politics and Elon Musk. Elon Musk uses it every day to tweet some weird stuff, but the man's got a foothold in the door because he has all these people who enticed in what he says. So, like, I think he put, like, a picture of a fork in the middle of a road one time, and everybody just lost their minds over this fork. I'm just like, what is this? But social media in general, like LinkedIn, I've used LinkedIn tons of times, and it has boosted my entrepreneur career. Twitter has done the same. Facebook, and we've talked about this, Facebook is basically borrowed land. And it doesn't matter what social media platform you're on borrowed land. And you said that. You said it's borrowed land. You're renting a space to use their servers, to use their data and stuff, and you're on their system renting that. And it doesn't matter what you do. If you screw up on that platform and they don't like it, they can kick you off their land. They can be like, well, you violate, as they like to say, you violate our terms and agreement. You didn't follow instructions, so now we're going to take your land rights and you're find somewhere else to go, and you could go somewhere else. You do the same thing. They're just going to keep going down the row. I haven't seen much as far as LinkedIn doing that, but then again, LinkedIn is not like Twitter. It's not like Facebook. The posts are more geared towards business and stuff. So I haven't seen people post political stuff. I have seen more business stuff. So LinkedIn has been kind of tame, and actually sometimes I'll get so irritated with Twitter and Facebook and stuff. I'll go on LinkedIn to scroll through the posts to find something interesting to read. But no, like Twitter is, I think, has been gaining some good momentum here because a lot of people have used it to connect and do some really great things, to collaborate on some really great ideas. Same with LinkedIn. There's been some great collaborations, but in a couple times I have used before I used really like heavily, there has been people who have reached out to me. I think one of your guests came on and said that when people reach out to them, they try and pitch them this idea, and I really wish they would like somehow kind of monitor that. Is like, you don't pitch try and sell someone something, and some of these accounts don't look that real when they're pitching me this idea, and I'm just like, are you, But I go on, I post about my show on there. I post on Twitter. I post on Instagram. I post on Facebook. I don't use Snapchat or TikTok. And that's another thing. TikTok is now being considered a social media site, a video social site. There's just so many social things out there. But as far as I'm concerned, the ones that I actually like and enjoy using still are Twitter and Instagram. Twitter and LinkedIn, I should say. And LinkedIn and Twitter, they're very, I would say, in my opinion, and you can quote me on, or, correct me on this, is I feel like they're more geared towards people of business. Like Twitter, when it first started, was geared towards people who wanted to tweet a quick message like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Check it out, send a link or whatever on there. And the same with LinkedIn. It's like, hey, this is what I'm doing in my career space. Check it out. Like, I got a new job. I started a new career. I did this. I, did that. And that's one of the things I really like about LinkedIn and Twitter. Now, Nick, as far as that goes, do you use LinkedIn? Do you use it as a space to announce like business and stuff, or what do you mainly use? I know what you use Twitter for, but what do you use LinkedIn for, or do you use it at all?
I mean, I use a little bit of everything. I'm just starting to get back into Facebook again. LinkedIn is one that I've put very minimal effort into, but I see a lot of upside to it, and I want to focus on that. I just frankly forget about it. I think that's the big thing with LinkedIn, is people just basically forget that it's even there. But I've been seeing a lot more people talk about it. I've had quite a few guests come on my show now talking about LinkedIn, and especially on Clubhouse, like people are all talking about LinkedIn and how powerful of a platform it is. And I think LinkedIn's finally kind of giving into that social media-esque aspect of being that kind of platform, because they started introducing stories. They just now finally started introducing live video. That was a big thing. I think that's still in beta yet, and only some people have access to it, but live video is now a thing on LinkedIn. And they're going to be releasing a couple other features. I think they're working on their own Clubhouse, like competitor, and then they're also working on a way, I think it's basically going to be like a freelance market. So you can list your own services on LinkedIn, kind of like how you would with like Fiverr or Upwork. You could list your services or hire out services directly from LinkedIn, and now you don't have to use multiple platforms to achieve the same thing, which I think is going to be huge for the platform. But I've noticed a lot more people, especially people who are serious about growing their own businesses, people who want to build relationships with people and hopefully foster great connections that like expand their network and lead to new opportunities. They're using LinkedIn to do it. And like everything else, there's a right and a wrong way to do it. Like you said, just going straight for the pitch and diving in, hoping for a Hail Mary. I mean, that's just not going to work. But I think there's a huge upside potential, and it's something I do want to spend more time with. I just have to finally shut up and do it.
Yeah, and using LinkedIn for your show might actually be really good because, I mean, the way it sounds like I didn't even know that stuff. I'm glad you actually said that. I'm glad we actually are doing this episode because there's stuff that I didn't even know that LinkedIn's starting to do, becoming like, because I've never used Fiverr or Fever, whatever you pronounce it. I can never pronounce it, but that I've heard good things about how people have used it. I've heard bad things. But if LinkedIn's going that direction, I find LinkedIn has been in the space a lot longer, and it's a lot more trustworthy. And so if it was going that direction, I would trust LinkedIn over the other app, in my opinion, just because it has the name, it has the fan base, and I like LinkedIn's how should I do this? The way it's designed. I like how it's designed. Same with Twitter. Like, Twitter has a clean design, and they've never changed it. They've only changed very minimal things. Like, it has never really significantly changed, drastically changed. It's always been minimal changes, and I like that. Whereas, like, LinkedIn has changed some things. They have, like, just slowly. They haven't, like, gone to, like, a Facebook or anything. And that's been great, because it's, like, I feel like when I'm on my profile, I'm looking at it, it looks professional. Like, I feel like it's more professional, more put together than in Facebook's. Now, it may not have your news feed built into it, that maybe I'm using it wrong, but it seems more clean, just like Twitter is. And having a clean social media site, something that's gonna, maybe they're gonna change it to use it for the freelancing stuff, but having that, using that, especially if you're a podcaster, like, hey, you can set up to say, hey, I have a podcast, would you like to be a guest? And freelance the fact that you're trying to get guests on. I know that Wildcast, it's a LinkedIn. In my opinion, it's a LinkedIn for podcasters, and the premise is great, and I like it, and I've been using it. Thing is, I think there's still a lot of work to be done, because to get to where LinkedIn is, to have that kind of, I gotta say, the premonition that it's this thing that everybody wants to use to do podcasting, and you need to have the background and stuff. And I think that Wildcast, I've been using it a little bit here and there, just testing it out and stuff. And I think we talked about yesterday, they're doing great. But I think if we had something like LinkedIn doing that, like where they said, hey, we don't just want to do business, we don't just want to do getting jobs, you need to be able to get your stuff out there. And if I'm able to put my podcast on there and say, hey, all you people on here, if I'm looking for a guest, and if you're interested, message me. And like I said, I really do not like being sold on a product. I do not like being pushed into that. And it's a turnoff, because I'll have people send me a connection with a message, and it says, hey, are you looking for a web development company to do this? And I'm like, no, I couldn't. And I think it was, I want to say Jordan Mendoza said on your podcast, where he said sending a message where it's like, hey, great for the connection. I think that was him, or Pat Flynn. I'm blanking on this. But he was like,
yeah, no, it was Jordan.
Yeah, thank you for the connection. Basically went down, and then he's like, what can I do to help you? And then end it there. And I think that's great, because if you do that, that's a lot more receptive than that. And that's one of the things that, people don't understand. It's like, if you're using social media to just sell yourself over and over again, that's you're not going to get anywhere. If you're trying to help other people and then bring up, hey, I want to sell you this, that's how you do it. Like, I think we were talking about yesterday, I was like, if I was to walk up on the street and just sell you on an idea, whereas instead of building that connection first, you're not going to buy into it. I mean, for example, Nick, if I were to come up to you and on the street and say, hey, I got this product, buy it now, like, would you be more receptive to that? Or if I came up to you and said, hey, I'm interested in connecting with you and just getting to know you, what can I do to help you? In my opinion, I think you would have gone for the second one. I would hope so, unless you're like, well, I'm just going to buy that anyway. I don't care. Just let me buy it. But, yeah. But I feel like the reception needs to be better, and I think that LinkedIn has a lot more years to go to get there. And I've seen a lot of the younger crowd jumping on LinkedIn, which is great, but they don't set their profile up correctly. They don't, I think there needs to be a way that you can train people on this, because LinkedIn it can be used for good things. And if you set up your profile, look professional, you put your links in. Like, we've discussed, I just started using Solo, which is my link for all my links, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my podcasting, my YouTube channel, my personal and private Facebook. All that stuff's in there. And people can reach out to me, and I can just send them that link. But now I found out I can put that link anywhere, so I put it on LinkedIn, and I've gotten clicks off of it. People have sent me stuff, so that's great. If you set it professionally and you create a website or something, but if you're just putting LinkedIn on to say you have LinkedIn, like Facebook or YouTube or Facebook and Twitter, like, oh, hey, I have a Twitter, I have a Facebook. Okay, that's great. You have a LinkedIn, but if you're using it in the correct way and setting up a professional picture, like me, I like having a professional picture. So I had a photographer take pictures of me looking professional and post them up there, and I put like a professional background, and if you go on the website, which I wish they would let you do it from the app, you can change the background, you can change more stuff on the website, and then you set it up in a professional manner, just like Twitter. If you're going to be if you're using social media to present yourself in a business, in an entrepreneurship manner, you don't want to have things thrown everywhere. You want to make it look clean, and you want to have a great background picture, you want to have a great photo, you want to have a great bio, you want to have a great like links have to be clean, like, and that's my opinion, how how to keep it down there so everybody's like, oh, this guy's got a really professional profile on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram, and it's really clean, and everywhere I go he actually looks, now that's a question I want to ask. Nick, do you agree with that? Do you think that having a clean profile brings more people to your site? If someone views you and you have a clean profile and stuff, do you think it's more receptive in that way than it is if someone just throws everything on there and just, does it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. That was something we actually talked about when Jordan came on my podcast. I think it was episode 35 that he came on. So if anybody wants to hear that, we go pretty deep into LinkedIn, but we talked about exactly that. You can't build a house when you don't have the foundation set. Mm-hmm. And that profile on LinkedIn is basically your foundation. If your foundation isn't there, I mean, I don't know, if you're not on LinkedIn Premium and you comment on someone's request or you send them a connection request, you usually always get the notification shortly after that says someone viewed your profile. They're going to your profile the very first thing. And if that profile is not appealing or doesn't, I guess, attract that type of person, they're going to click away. They're probably going to deny your request, and that's going to be the end of it. So until you really start pushing the networking and trying to build the connections and get all that figured out, you need to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is optimized and it's looking good and it actually shows people what you have to offer.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. I really do. I think that, having, like what you just said, having the foundation, having that before someone, say I was to send out a request to someone and start a message, but my profile looked awful, and they click into that and they look at that and they're like, wow, this guy wants me on his show, but his profile isn't that great looking. And they would click away and they wouldn't join in. They would actually probably go somewhere else to another show or another business or something. And when you have that professional look and those professional links and your resume is all clean on there, or your where you've worked and the time you've worked and the background on it is all clean, and you make it look good, that's when someone's going to be interested. Same with Twitter. You have a bio, you have all that stuff. If you just throw a bio together, if you just throw that in there and and you make it look like, oh, quickly, gotta throw it together, I'm gonna send this message, make it look professional, make it look good. Same with Facebook. I know Facebook is a social site and everybody's just posting pictures of their families, but if you're a business owner, and I'm gonna tell people this, I have learned this the hard way. If you're posting stuff politically and attacking someone or going after someone because of their beliefs or whatever, and you're posting that publicly and you have a professional bio and then you're trying to reach out to people, you're not going to get hits. If you want to be a professional person, you want to take all those political posts down. You want to take the stuff down that you don't think is going to put a positive spin on things. If you don't put positivity up and you put negative stuff up, no one's going to reach out to you. So if you put a positive spin on your Facebook, a positive spin on your Twitter, a positive spin on everything you do on social sites, you're going to have a much better response than you will if you were like that foundation you were talking about, Nick. If you have that foundation in a good way, you're going to get responses. You're going to get those people coming and drawing into your site. And I know you can agree with this, Nick, because you have a podcast. You had some great guests. I'm sure Pat Flynn didn't just look at your site or wherever you reached out to him and was like, this guy, he actually probably saw it and was like, well, this guy's got some, he's professional. He's got some great guests on before, so I want to go on. And that's what I want to talk about, Nick. As far as like your side of things, you say you don't use LinkedIn that much, but and you don't really use Facebook. When you're going to set up these things, are you going to like create professional graphics and stuff for this, or are you just going to throw it together?
I mean, I would definitely, if you're at the very beginning stages where you don't have any of that stuff set up, I mean, I would throw up what you can. For all the graphics that I make, I use Canva. Canva is an amazing platform, makes it super simple, and you could even go search up like Facebook cover photo or LinkedIn cover photo and get a bunch of ideas and examples and kind of pick and choose and kind of throw together some stuff. I would definitely start there. But one thing that you brought up Solo, that Solo link. I use Linktree. It all functions the same. What's really awesome with those links, if you have that in your profile and someone clicks on it, you're able to see the analytics behind them clicking on that link. So what I would do, like take Twitter, for example, because I would say that's a little bit less pressure. I don't think really either of them have that much pressure, but it's kind of a little bit more open. Like you got not just business professional people, but just everybody. Throw your link, create your bio, throw that link in your Twitter bio and see what happens. See if you get people clicking on it. See if no one clicks on it. See if people are visiting your profile and then not clicking on the link. Like that could be an indication that your profile isn't quite set up right. And then you can translate that over to LinkedIn and kind of do the same kind of testing. Start reaching out to people, try to build those connections, build those conversations. If no one's clicking on your links, if no one's visiting your profile, obviously something's wrong. Something that you're doing right now is turning them off. So a lot of it, until you start doing it, it's going to be very difficult. Yes, there are like having the professional headshot, making sure you list out your experience and the skills that you have, like all of that's important. But you want to make sure that if you're trying to reach clients or potential partners or whatever it is on LinkedIn, you want to make sure that the information, it's like building out a resume. If you go apply for a job as like an IT manager, it's going to be completely different than if you're going to go to apply for a job as a project manager. You're going to cater it a little bit differently. So knowing who your target market or your target audience is or who you're wanting to build those relationships with should kind of guide what that profile is going to look like. You want that to be appealing to them. But then another thing that I want to talk about on LinkedIn is you talk about like staying super professional. I think it's also important to remember to be authentic. Like we can be straight edge, like straight, like across the board, like business. But not everyone, especially nowadays after COVID and the pandemic and all that stuff hit, people want to know that there's humans on the other side. You're not a robot. So you have to remember to, when you're posting and you're creating your profile and doing all this stuff, like use LinkedIn stories, use the platform to share some personal information and show people that you are a human being. You're not some robot behind a desk. Like you have to have a little bit of authenticity, but like just remember who your audience is. Like I said, don't post super politically and all that. Like don't try to ruffle feathers, but show people that you're a real person.
Yeah. And I like that because if you're not, and I talked about this on your show, and I'll as soon as that launches, I'll leave links for my listeners. But I talked about being authentic, and one of the things you commended me on is realism, and you want to be real with people. You don't want to be fake. If you're fake with someone, if you're not genuine, and you lie a lot on your thing about how great you're doing and stuff, that's not going to get you viewers. It's not going to get you listeners. It's not going to get you people who are interested in your services. You want to be bringing your best and your brightest and your most genuine self to the table. You want to have that connection. You want to have something that people can be like, oh my goodness, I can relate. I feel that. Like during COVID, a lot of people told me that the one thing when they were listening to my show, especially now, it's like they're like, wow, like I feel like I'm connected to someone who I'm not even connected to. And that's a great thing. It's like when you get those messages and you get those responses from people in public, it's great because you feel like you've done something. But if you're not bringing your genuine self to the table and you're just, saying, oh, hey, this is me on LinkedIn, and in real life you're not like that, that's no. And I really do think after I started taking that political stuff down, after I started, just posting positivity and stuff that I felt was just in a positive space, I started realizing people started listening to me more and respecting me more and coming out and saying, hey, we may not agree with things, we may not be on the same wavelength, but I would love to have a conversation with you. And that's really been great because I haven't agreed with all my guests. Like some of my guests are on different wavelength than me. Like I like to use the word wavelength because that's how I consider it. But they're on different genre, they're on a different wavelength, they're on a different political stance, and yet I still want the chance to talk to them. And having my social sites look like they do has allowed me to reach out and talk to people in a way that, they're like, well, if he was like this or he was like that, I would never talk to him. But if I take a neutral stance and I'm like, hey, I just want to have a conversation. I don't want to dog you. I don't want to attack you. I just want to have a conversation. And I think that's one of the things that even in your show, you never make it political. You never make it religious. You're just asking straightforward questions. And that's, you make the show about the guest and try and make the guest feel welcomed. And I really like that. Your show has had some great moments in it where I'm just like, man, like, I feel like authentically connected to your show. Like I feel like I'm in the live stream in the show. Like when you're talking, I don't feel like I'm in some room just listening to a radio program that doesn't feel real. So, yeah. So, dude, your show. I'm gonna leave links. I
appreciate that, man.
Your show. Yeah. Leave links to your show, or actually send me your link tree because that's like I said, I sent you my solo.
Yeah.
Send me your link tree, and I can set that in the show notes. But yeah. Having authenticity, and that's one of the things that Nick projected onto me whenever I met him, was being authentic with me. And he wasn't fake. He didn't say, hey, I'm not interested in talking to you. He actually reached out and was authentic. And if you're not authentic with people, you're not going to get responses. So the fact that Nick was authentic with me and we've connected and we've had this conversation back and forth on my show, on his show, or on Twitter, on Facebook, and now we talk on the phone, if you're not getting connected with people, like that's going back to LinkedIn. Let's go back to LinkedIn for a second, Nick. If you're on LinkedIn and you're saying, hey, I have this product, will you look into it? Will you think about buying it? If you're not doing what Jordan said, if you're not going back on and you're not saying, hey, I have a service, maybe I can help you with something. Maybe, let me just connect with you. Let's just have a conversation or, hey, how are you doing kind of deal. If you're not sending those kind of messages and being a friend or being a human being, like you said, if you're not being a human being, people aren't going to respond to you. In those aspects, Nick, when you're reaching out to people, and I'm curious because now I'm actually curious. When you reach out to people, what do you say? Like, when you're saying, hey, you want to be a guest, what do you say to people to get them on your show?
I mean, a lot of times if I'm reaching out, if I'm trying to get people to come on the show, I mean, I do a little bit of research on them. I figure out what they're doing, what they're working on. I have a background. I don't just reach out to someone cold and say, hey, you look like you'd be a good guest. You want to come on? Like, I actually know something about them, and I can actually resonate with what they're doing. And I basically tell them exactly that. Like, I love what you did. I listened to this podcast episode that you were on. Like, I love your story. I think what you're doing so great. I'd love to be able to share that story on my podcast. Mm-hmm. Is that something you'd be open to? And if they do, then that kind of opens the door, and we can kind of have more conversation. We can hop on a pre-interview call. I've done that with several guests, just kind of gauge and kind of get a feel for each other. And usually when I get guests on that pre-interview call, they're like ready to go. Like, let's do this thing. But I mean, it's all coming from a place of being genuine. Like, we talked about it on the podcast episode that we did on your show. You have a platform. You have a place for them to voice their opinion. And something we didn't really touch on there, with a podcast, once that episode is published, a lot of it is evergreen. A lot of it's not going anywhere. So who knows? Like, today, that show might only get 10 downloads. But 5 years from now, the show might explode, and that episode's now got thousands and thousands of downloads. And they've already put in the work. They've already done that episode with you, and they didn't have to do anything else since then. And
Yep.
now all of a sudden it's getting traction. So with the podcast, I mean, you have a platform, you have something that you can offer, and it's all about using that to your advantage to get guests on the show, but definitely come from a place of genuineness.
No, I get it, and that's true. And I wish we had touched on that. Now thinking back to it, I was like, man, we should have touched on that in the episode. But you're right. I mean, if you're not genuine in your messages, if you're not reaching out and you're not giving them something that they can, like, hey, let's jump into a preview call, like you said, like a preview call. Let's just talk for a few minutes and maybe see if you're interested. Like let's see if you're like what I'm saying and what I'm doing is actually something you're really wanting to do. And I have, like you said, I've done that with a couple of my guests as well. I have jumped into interview calls and stuff where it's like just us one-on-one talking, getting a feel for it. And then we jump into scheduling, and then we'll schedule the call and we'll do it, and it'll go well.
Oh, I can give you an actual real life example of what I'm doing right now. So I'm working on trying to get John Lee Dumas to come on the podcast.
Okay.
I think he'd be an awesome guest to have. And actually what I did, John Lee Dumas just came out with a brand new book, The Common Path to Uncommon Success. I read that book. I loved that book. I have been engaging with him on social media. So when he posts on Instagram, I'm always commenting on Instagram. I'm throwing him in my stories. I'm replying to his email newsletters. You'd be surprised how many people don't reply to an email newsletter. So even John Lee Dumas, who has a crazy following now, he saw the email that I replied to him in the newsletter, and he replied to me. And I had a back and forth with him for a second. So I'm kind of cultivating, trying to build that relationship so that when I do finally go for the ask, he's familiar with who I am. He's aware that I'm a fan of his and following what he's doing and appreciate what he's doing. And then when I go for that ask, it's going to be a lot easier because he's already recognized who I am. Mm-hmm. And I took a very similar, a longer drawn out approach when I got Pat Flynn on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And when I got him on, it was kind of an indirect, I didn't directly come out and ask him. It was kind of an accident, but it's all about like putting in a little bit of effort. You can't go and expect to reach the highest level person right out of the gate without doing a little bit of groundwork, because they got people pitching to them all the time.
You're right. And one of the things, actually, you got someone on my show that you had on your show, and you got me connected with him, and Trevor Oldham, and you got me connected with him, and then he got me connected with Dr. Eric Cole, and who's a man I didn't really know about to begin with, because it's like, he's a big time guy, but like I don't really focus on certain things, and whenever I got connected with him, I was like, oh my goodness, I want to buy his book, I want to get to know him better, and so I got to know the man, and it's so fascinating because you get to know somebody and you get to understand. But the one thing I appreciate, and going back to genuine feelings, is you were genuine with me. You were like, hey, I'll let you have him. Like, I know he was on my show. I'm like, here you go. And when you passed him off to me, and me and Trevor had some great conversations, he got, I was going to say Pat Flynn, Eric Cole on my show. And it was just great because I got to connect with someone who, in my walk of life, would never connect with on the street or in a bar or anywhere, unless it was like, someone was like, hey, this is so-and-so, hey, you should go talk to them. But like now I got a conversation, I got to meet them, and it was really awesome. So we are at our window though, but Nick, before we go, can you give a quick tip on what things you can do if you don't have graphic design knowledge or something, to throw together a social media site? What would you recommend they do to just make it look a little professional, even if they don't have the knowledge or where to go?
Honestly, I would do a little bit of digging. Look at people that you're following, whether that's Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you're looking. Go check out some profiles, see what they're sharing. You want your graphics, your social media to be informational. You want it to be eye-catching. So just pay attention to the profiles that you're looking at. See what catches your eye. See what grabs your attention. And when it comes down to actually designing the thing, like I said, hop on Canva. It's super simple. You literally type in Twitter banner or LinkedIn banner, and it'll give you a bunch of templates. And you can change colors. You can move stuff around, put your own text in there. Like for Canva, you don't need to have any kind of graphic design experience. It pretty well lays it out for you. And that's with a lot of the stuff that I do. I've gotten compliments on the graphics, and a lot of it started out as like a template that I use and just kind of modified and tweaked. So you can look like a pretty expert graphic designer with little to no graphic design experience.
Yep. Yeah, I back Nick up on this. I actually pay for Canva because it's just so great. I mean, you can do it from your phone. You can have it from your phone. I will say, if you're dragging and dropping, if you want to get precise movements, you want to go to your computer and you want to log in there. But Canva is like, I was using SparkPost for the longest time, and SparkPost is great. But as far as if you're wanting to do thumbnails and stuff, if you type in for YouTube thumbnail or Twitter header or Twitter or Facebook header or Facebook post, they'll have templates, and all you do is edit it. So I'm backing you up on this one, Nick. Canva I've been using it for all my YouTube thumbnails. I've been using it for all my show stuff. Anything I need, it's all right there. And they actually have templates that's really good to use. So like if you have a podcast, there's some great templates for podcasting. But Nick, thank you so much for joining me again today. For everybody listening, for the episode that Nick was talking to, there was, if you haven't listened to it, the 50th episode, podcasting episode, went live a few days ago. So please tune in to hear that. It was the 50th episode. This is actually probably, when this one airs, it'll probably either be like the 53rd, 54th episode. So just go back to that one. That was a very awesome episode. We basically just discussed podcasting and what to do to get into the space. So just tune in to find out, to hear that one. Nick, again, thank you so much, and I look forward to having you on the show in the future.
Yes, man. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Everyone have a great night and stay safe.